Welcome to Fringe Fanatics with Chad Lee and Chris Sane.
And we are back for a special edition of Fringe Fanatics. That's right.
Bonus episode.
Yeah, a little halfway point, a little over halfway point. But we got a guest we wanted to get on is Evan Closky or Closky. We're going to find that out real quick when we introduce him. But he is from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He writes I know he's on Tampa Bay 10.
Yeah, he's the Channel 10 sports guy on their news, their local news. He's an Emmy award-winning news anchor. Pretty big deal. Covers every Tampa Bay sports team, the Lightning, the Rays, and the Buccaneers. But we're going to be focusing on asking him about the Buccaneers.
Yes.
So
he is the sports director at Tampa Bay 10. So excuse me for selling him short there. But
we are very humbled, and we're very honored to have him on.
Yes, and we are going to give him a call shortly. We're not going to be doing any of the normal going through our weeks or anything like that. We're just going to give him a call. But to celebrate this episode, we're going to take a quick shot. So on that note...
To 85.5.
85.5. Here we are.
Let's do it.
Cheers to each and all of you for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Good old Jack. There we go.
Okay, let's call him.
Now we're ready.
Oh, man. Whew. I'm going to let you take this one to begin with, okay?
I'm cool with that.
All right, here we go.
Let's hope he answers.
He will.
A couple of measly.
Hello, it's Evan.
Hi, Evan. This is Chad and Chris here from Fringe Fanatics. We appreciate you taking our call, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so thanks a lot. Like I said earlier, we kind of gave our listeners a little bit of a rundown of your background, but if you don't mind, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and like what got you into sports media?
Yeah. So, obviously I'm the sports director out in Tampa. I grew up huge sports fan, huge baseball fan, and, I would play every type of video game with my brother growing up. I would play sports with my brother. I was a younger brother. So I was really, I played travel baseball my entire life.
Wow.
Dabbled in basketball, and I was really just like my nickname in high school was actually Wood, because I was always diving for loose balls on the ground. So my assistant coach in basketball called me Wood.
That could definitely go a different way too. But
the funny story was my high school principal. We have like battle of the classes, and on the back of my T-shirt I had Wood, and I just remember my high school teacher coming up to me being like, "Why is your nickname Wood?" And he was like, "You know what? I don't need to hear the answer." I was like, "Not what you think." But yeah, so ended up my brother, who's 4 years older than me, he went to Ohio State, and when I was a freshman in high school, I thought I was going to go to Michigan just to kind of tick him off, and then eventually I started kind of visiting him, and I ended up falling in love with Ohio State myself. Couldn't imagine rooting for another team, and I figured if I wanted to do sports media, no better place than to go to a school where there are a lot of great teams, to where even if their journalism school isn't what maybe Syracuse, USC, Washington State, Arizona State, whatever, Northwestern, not what those places are, but I figured if I can go to a school where I'm covering big time athletics, I can kind of run into some people who, kind of steer me in the right direction. And so I went to Ohio State, started out in the journalism program, working for the newspaper my sophomore year, did that for a full year, then had, an internship in TV, kind of figured out, I was like, oh, I can like totally be myself a lot more on the TV side of things than maybe on the print side of things. And then I tried to figure out ways to get myself into the TV world. Did internships back in New York, worked at CBS News, all this stuff. I kind of did news and sports.
Yeah.
Worked at the affiliate level in Columbus, Ohio, at the CBS station there for a full year. They offered me a producing job when I was done. I accepted that out of the gates because I needed a job after school. I sent out 8 total reels. I was going to do a whole thing over the summer, right? But I sent 8 out, and then I got my job offer And then of those 8, I got one call from Fargo, North Dakota. And they, when I went through the whole process, the first person they wanted actually had a horrible driving record, so I kind of won that by default. And then they were, then I had to make a decision whether I wanted to stay in school and kind of have, continue living a little bit of a comfortable life and be a producer on the news side of things, something I didn't really want to do, but I wanted to get my foot in the door, or do sports and kind of make that my, try it, go out and do it. And, I remember one of my mentors was just pretty much like, if you don't take this job, don't fool yourself. You're not going to find your way back into the sports world. Like, this is how you have to start. So I was like, okay. I was like, I'm doing it. Screw it. YOLO. And drove. I graduated, drove up to Fargo a few days later, started working like immediately. And that's really when I kind of like, as an individual, went from like a kid to a man, because it was the first time in my life I wasn't surrounded with a bunch of friends and distractions, and I kind of learned like a lot about myself, spending a lot of like me time, which I don't think people necessarily realize how much time you are putting into, like, you go up through high school and college and how much time you're spending with other people versus yourself. So I kind of discovered who I wanted to be. I discovered a lot about how much I needed to learn in this industry: shoot, edit, write, work under pressure, know everything about the area. I mean, back in those days, I can tell you everything about the high school teams, in Fargo and Moorhead, which, was the area we covered. And, when I kind of got there, I still was like reading stuff on the Mets and the Buckeyes and all the things that I personally loved. And in Fargo, I kind of learned after a year of not really feeling like I was progressing or getting better, I had to really sink my teeth into the viewing area and kind of, say, like, this is my community. I got to really invest in it. And then once I started doing that, the job became so much easier because it was secondhand nature to me. So did that for 2 years, then moved to Spokane, Washington, worked out there for 4 years. So when I was in Fargo, I covered North Dakota State, North Dakota hockey. NDSU won back-to-back titles. I was there when Carson Wentz was the backup quarterback at North Dakota State.
Yeah.
So you watched the show, I would imagine, right? I gotta ask.
It's very different. The show Fargo and the movie actually takes place in like a Minnesotan town, but they named it Fargo. It's not as, the accents aren't like that. The accents come from a very small portion of Minnesota, which I ran into like one person I worked with who had it. Otherwise, I was like the New Yorker. Yeah, I was the New Yorker who had the accent up there.
That's cool.
Had to learn how to kind of filter that out. And then, moved to Spokane, covered Gonzaga and Washington State predominantly. Mike Leach kind of turned around that Wazoo program. Gonzaga, I got to cover their first trip to the Final Four, the national championship, which still to this day is one of my favorite kind of like work experiences ever, of kind of like following that team for a full month and the community getting completely invested. Love Spokane. Can't say enough about that area. Spent 4 years there. Then it would kind of got to the time where it was like, I need to get in front of a professional. I need to cover a professional team. I need to take what I'm learning and what I'm doing and progressing and kind of how I'm growing in this industry and do that for a pro team, which is how I landed in San Antonio for 3 years. Again, absolutely love San Antonio. Such a community-first city for as large of a city as it is. Spent 3 years there, and then completely on a whim, like wasn't even like really applying for jobs within the company that I'm at, Tegna. A sports director job was open in Tampa. I happened to come across it after the Bucs won their Super Bowl, and I literally just sent my hat in the ring, like just did one of those, like, I didn't even like reach out fully. I sent in the application. I sent an email, I think, to the news director saying, hey, this is kind of my stuff. I sent in a formal application. Didn't expect to hear back, and 3 weeks later was interview, and then I was getting offered the job and landed here in Tampa in 2021. And my first month on the job was onboarding and was immediately sent to Sunrise to cover the Stanley Cup playoffs as the Lightning were coming off their 2020 Cup. And that experience was absolutely nerve-wracking because I had to learn the area and I had to learn everything about the Lightning in the quickest amount of time. And anything about Stanley Cup playoffs, everything happens every other day. There's like no breathing room. It's like game break. And there is no stopping. You're working like for 2.5 months straight. And that was probably my favorite experience of going through that entire run, culminating in Game 5, winning inside Amalie Arena, the confetti coming down, and then literally my live shot 3 minutes later, which I could not tell you how hot and how humid it was that night in Tampa, but it was a horrible night to be wearing a suit. And and then ultimately I've been here since 2021 and have absolutely loved it, as there's sunshine pretty much like every day outside of the showers that come during the heart of the summer. So that's just me in a nutshell, very quickly, where I was, how I got there, where I've been, and where I am now.
Yeah, the fact you were able to get through that so quickly is beyond impressive. That was quite the resume, so to speak.
And a huge inspiration, man. I mean, we're just a couple of Joe Schmoes that love talking about sports, drinking a little whiskey and everything like that. But I mean, and we've had some guests on a lot through the Locked On Network and everything, but I believe you're our first guest that's like on the news. I mean, that's freaking awesome, man. And just the amount of coverage and depth you've got to go for. It's not just one center team. You cover the Lightning, the Rays, and the Buccaneers. Cover it all. So yeah, it's very inspirational.
Do you cover the Panthers at all?
I appreciate that. Not so much. Okay. I mean, certainly we'll mention them. Now that they're in the final, same thing with like the Miami Heat last year when they were going through it. Like we'll throw it in there a little bit, but for the most part, that would be like if you were in New York and you were going to cover like the Phillies. It's like they're like not really here. Like same. I mean, in that example, it's not the same state, but honestly, Philly is like twice as close to New York as Sunrise is to Tampa. So
which is crazy. You don't realize how big
it's a little
Florida
bit
is.
It's about 4 hours away, like driving time.
That's crazy.
But certainly being a Florida team, it is something to mention. It is a rivalry here, so nothing that we would ignore, but nothing that we're going to sink our teeth in or travel or do anything like that. Or I'm going to like invest like oodles of my free time to kind of like make sure I'm keeping up with like Panthers news. But certainly, I know the bare basics of what's going on with that team, especially since the Lightning and the Panthers have had such a heated rivalry here for the past few years. So I've kind of learned them through osmosis of this entire process.
That's crazy. It's really cool. I did want to mention though, you also won an Emmy, correct?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. I wanted to ask.
I've won a couple. I won 2.
Sorry, I didn't mean to short sell you.
No. I won 2 Emmys. I've also lost. I've also been nominated and lost at least 15, 16. I lost count.
Still, that's nuts.
So what did you win those for? Just your sports coverage?
It was writing, correct?
When I was in Texas, I won them both for writing.
Wow.
Yeah. Man. And then I won in Spokane. Yeah, I won in Spokane at Murrow as well for my writing. So I actually have not won I've been nominated a handful of times for sportscaster, whatever, but I've yet to win on that front. My writing is usually what carries the day. And I don't do as much storytelling now as I did back in, kind of growing up through the industry and being a weekend sports anchor for the first 10 years of my career. That's a lot of storytelling, a lot of going out in the community and telling and really meeting people. I miss that to a degree. I've also learned how to spread my wings on the anchor set now, but that certainly was probably like the most foundational level of my growth through this industry.
Man, that is quite the accomplishments. This, I don't feel like you're that far along in your career by any means. You've probably got twice as long left. As I
got less hair and more gray hairs. At the age of,
it's starting to happen to the best
now.
Of us.
I'm very young for where I am, and I'm also feeling pretty old. So it's kind of a juxtaposition I didn't quite foresee when I took that drive out to Fargo, X amount of years ago.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, let's get into some sports. I feel like we could just keep talking to you about all of your accomplishments for the entire time, but we don't want to keep you
let's not
all night. Yeah, God forbid you talk about yourself for half an hour. But the big news today, and this is something I had wanted to ask you before it happened, but obviously Justin Jefferson gets paid. It's like $35 million a year is what they're looking at. But my question initially before that even happened was Godwin is in the final year of his contract, and negotiations really haven't started yet on either side from what I've been reading into. Do you think the teams are they going to go the wait and see route before coming to the table just to see how it goes with the new offense under Liam Cohen? Or now that this deal came out, have they already been effectively priced out of Godwin at this point?
I mean, Godwin isn't going to touch Justin Jefferson money anyway. So, I mean, as much as we love Chris Godwin here as a person and also as fans love him as a player on the field, that's still not really his price range so I don't know if that necessarily affects anything. Like you go down to Miami, right? Like what Tyreek Hill is going to want, that's going to be much more of a one-for-one comp factor. But certainly with the Buccaneers and Chris Godwin, I would imagine they're going to see this year through. The Buccaneers just did it with Mike Evans and said, we're willing to kind of see how this year goes. Now, Mike Evans shoved it right in their face, right? And the Bucs were willing to pay him that money. And I think the Buccaneers would love nothing more than for Chris Godwin to shove it right back in their face and say, pay me, right? But there are some logistical elements to this. I think that paying wide receivers is a necessary evil, but do you really want to pay multiple wide receivers? I don't know if that's a winning formula long-term for an NFL team.
Yeah.
It's a salary, like these are decisions that Jason Light would not want to go through. He would love to just sign Chris. He's such an exemplary example of what you want out of a teammate, a player, all these things. But Chris is no young dude anymore, and he's going to have to prove this season that the little decline we've seen since his injury, that's he's healthier and like he can turn that corner and be just as explosive. We know that he eviscerates teams in zone. I think in man it's a little bit of a challenge, so that's a little bit of a weakness. But Chris Godwin, at least from what we're told, is going to slip into what that Cooper Kupp role has been with the Rams in that offense since Liam Cohen's coming over, and he's going to bring a very similar style. So if that is kind of the way we're seeing it, I do expect Chris Godwin to be a lot more of a factor this year in the slot predominantly versus what Dave Canales was kind of doing, where he did not know how to utilize Chris. He didn't. He didn't know what to do with him, and that's kind of why you saw up and down play, some frustrations from Chris Godwin himself, which is extremely rare for him. But I do envision that we will not see a deal between the Bucs and Chris Godwin, and they will see it through. And at the end of the year, that will be one of the biggest talking points for us, along with Tristan Wirfs, which I'm a bit more optimistic Jason Light will get that deal done. But even if he doesn't, he ain't going anywhere. He's going to be a Buccaneer a long time. And if the price goes up on him, the price goes up. But they will pay Tristan Wirfs. He will be a Buccaneer 1,000%.
Well, that's probably a big reason why they drafted Jalen McMillan at number 92 as well, to possibly prepare for Chris Godwin's departure, because this guy was a slot at Washington, and he got 6 passes out of the backfield last year, so he can do a lot. And, I mean, I watched a lot of Washington games. We're here in Colorado. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. So we watched a lot of Pac-12 games, and I mean, if any wide receiver for that Washington team was tearing it up. But, I mean, he kind of played that sub-role to Rome Odunze, and I think that's a stellar pick at Jalen McMillan, who's what they call a natural wide receiver, as the Bucs assistant general manager Spike Dick said. So
John Spytag, yep.
Yep.
Yeah. I happen to watch a lot of Pac-12 myself. My wife went to Washington State, so pour some out for my Cougs. But, like the thing is with a lot of the Bucs people, you hear if McMillan didn't get injured this year, they do not believe they would have been able to draft him where they got him. Mm-hmm. That his production, even the year before, was excellent. And that this year it tabled off a little bit because of the injury. He performed in the playoffs when Washington made it there. I'm pretty sure he had a touchdown in that game against Texas. But yeah, and that UW offense, I mean, between Rome and Polk and McMillan, and not to mention their strong rushing attack with Dylan Johnson, I believe, they had a lot of options. So they didn't need Jalen McMillan to really pop off. Even if he were fully healthy, there were a lot of options for that offense to go through. And so, the Bucs drafted Devin Culp as well. It's sort of the same thing. Like, they definitely didn't need tight end production on that team. So there were a lot of things where that offense was so good and there were so many mouths to feed that you just kind of wonder. You don't necessarily need to look at the numbers as much as the tape. And I think you're on the right track that McMillan is a little bit of a hedge, that if they got to part ways with Chris, they are bringing in the help and getting him a year this year to work under Chris and get him prepared for a larger role in 2025, where they will probably have to draft another wide receiver. But we'll see when we get down there.
Cross that bridge when we get to it.
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead. Okay. Well, another one that I got to bring up, because it's one. I mean, we could talk about the first round draft pick. I mean, it really was not too much to cover because it's just a good, solid pick at Graham Barton. You got to replace with Ryan Jensen's retirement. It's a solid pick. But the one that there's Chris Broswell that I want to talk about. But right now, we're going to move down to the fourth round because you guys stole the pick that I wanted my Chiefs to take, and Bucky Irving. Man, that dude is a stud. He's a little 5'9", 192 pounds of muscle. Runs that 4.5, 40-yard dash. The big thing here is the Bucs have had the league's worst rushing attack over the last 2 seasons. So I think it was a solid pick in trying to get a good running back to complement Rachaad White, who I think is going to take a big leap this year.
Yeah, I mean, Rachaad, the thing is with Bucky, he makes people miss. Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of his game. Now, I'm very interested in, it kind of seemed like to me they needed someone who I thought for Rachaad was going to be a little bit more of a bulldozer. They need someone a little north and south because Rachaad works best east and west and is a great pass catcher. And they kind of got someone who's a little bit of a slippery kind of scat back who also is a wonderful receiver, has a lot of similar qualities to Rachaad White without the size, right? I mean, the way that, the way that Bucky plays, he's more elusive, but Rachaad and Bucky both have amazing hands. So I'm very curious kind of how the rushing attack looks, because is it going to be a rushing attack in the most traditional form where you're going north and south, or is everything going to kind of be on the edges and they're going to want to get these guys into space, because that's probably where Rachaad and Bucky will operate the best. They got someone on the roster like a Sean Tucker who they would love to kind of be that bruiser up the gut. Chase Edmonds is the veteran there. But I do believe that Bucky will also make an impact on kick returns. I think we'll see just generally as that rule has changed, running backs will be seen more in that role as kind of it's a little bit more of an athletic play now versus like just getting someone who can catch the ball cleanly and wave their arm in the air.
Yeah.
So that's the most interesting part of Bucky to me is he's going to have his spots in the offense, and I have to see how he does pass pro, what that's going to look like on third down. But, Rachaad White's an amazing blocker, in my opinion, on third downs as well. So maybe you see Bucky on early downs, you don't even have to worry about it. But I'm really interested to see the impact that he makes kind of on kickoffs and as the change-up to Rachaad White, who, Rashaad's got a lot to prove, at least between the tackles. His, yards per carry is not anything to brag about. The rushing attack has not been great for three years for the Buccaneers. And you mentioned Graham Barton, the first-round pick. Nothing sexy about it, but it's like eating vegetables. You don't get excited about eating them, but you know what? You need them.
Yeah.
So
Need your meat and taters.
Graham Barton, I think. Yeah, exactly. So I think that Graham Barton is he was a very good pick, a very sound pick for this team. It's what they needed, and they needed more beef up front. and that should help the rushing attack as they can get some sort of push in the trenches.
Well, yeah, and it's like what you said with them bringing over the Rams offensive coordinator. You see what he did with a guy like Kyron Williams. Nobody knew who Kyron Williams was, but he found a way to use him. And I didn't realize this till reading this now, but Bucky Irving had 56 receptions last year and led all FBS running backs. So, yeah, it's almost like they're getting another clone of Rachaad White. But, yeah, like a different physical size, obviously, so they could have a little bit of a double-headed attack there.
Yeah, and I'm very interested what happens if you put Rashad and Bucky on the same play, and you send them both flaring out right and left.
You don't know,
and you have linebackers who are both exactly like you would figure that one of them is going to win their route. So there's a lot of creativity that might happen. And that's nothing that I've seen from going out OTAs. They're doing very general, basic level stuff. There's nothing that really garner any opinion on from what I see. But those are just the things that I think about with that pick. Oh, you got like an elite pass-catching running back, and then you brought in one of the best pass-catching running backs from the NCAA this year. I would imagine you're probably going to try to get them in open space passing them the ball. Just reading through the tea leaves.
I think that'd be a good idea.
To me, so that's just me adding 1 + 1.
I hear that.
Well, I mean, with the addition of these weapons with Bucky, like we've been talking about, with the questions surrounding Godwin and as well with McMillan being drafted, obviously there is faith in Baker Mayfield, but I guess I'd like to get, what's your thoughts on Baker? I mean, they give him a decent contract. It's roughly $38.3 million a year, and it's $100 million with upwards of 115 with all of the incentives and stuff. But what's your honest thought? Because honestly, I think Baker, for one, is a gamer. I think he's a great locker room guy. I think everybody rallies around him. It's almost like Tim Tebow, but with more
grit.
Yeah. With better quarterback.
I don't think you're going to see Tim Tebow smelling salty
mostly better quarterback play.
Yeah, better quarterback play.
Yeah.
But he's come in and he's, as far as I'm concerned, overachieved because he was just basically supposed to be a gap filler.
Yeah.
And here he is now.
The guy's got a cannon, man.
He does, and he's a legitimate quarterback now. I just kind of want to hear what somebody who's covered the team. What's your thoughts on him?
All the things that you said are true. I mean, first off, he has all the respect in that locker room from the players. I laugh at Tristan Wirfs, who kind of said it last year. Look, they all love Tom Brady, but he wasn't going to go grab a beer with Tom Brady, and Baker Mayfield's his boy. So it's just it's one of those things where he's one of the guys. Yeah. Tom Brady was an awesome teammate, but he also was this superstar kind of man, it's like Pops on the team. So Baker's one of the guys. He earned the respect. He's a gamer. I mean, even game one in Minnesota, that huge play he had to kind of give the shove that went viral, and he was talking all that smack. And I forget who it was. Put your weight up, little boy, whatever it was. But he does those things. He lowers his shoulder. He gets the tough yards. That he's going to give it his all. He's willing to take those hits for the team, and he's a team first guy. So he I mean, especially for what he played under. I mean, the Bucs, they weren't necessarily seeking Baker out. I think they were open to the idea, obviously, because they brought him in. Baker sought the Bucs out in that situation. He was like, look, this might be my last chance. You need a QB. I'm going to come in here for pennies on the dollar. Just give me a shot. Let me earn it, right? And so last year when he was up and down. He had moments. He had moments of excellence, like the Packers game. He had moments of what the heck is going on, like during that losing streak. Like the Lions game, the first one around was kind of the start of it. The Lions game was probably his worst one at home in the Creamsicles. But, the deep ball wasn't working for him last year. For a large portion of it, it got better as the year went on. But he made a lot of clutch plays. I just think that it was a deal he earned. I think it was the right move to get Baker because, there still wasn't a great alternative out there. And I think that he is still young enough to, if you got some juice in this guy, you can really build around him potentially. Now, last year I always argued that the team, the way that he performed in the up and downs, you were still making tons of money on your investment with what you had at QB. So, to me, he deserved what he got. He deserved the money that he got because he earned that. And like whatever play he did, he exceeded expectations. This year, he's going to have a larger microscope under his play because now he's eaten a little bit more of the cap. Now you're making more money. Expectations have gone up. This isn't this like, oh, this team's going to stink this year, right? Like you just won your division again. You bring in pretty much everyone back. Like there better be improvement, right? There better not be a step backwards. So there will be a little bit more of a microscope on his play, but to say that they shouldn't have spent that money on him, we see it all the time in the NFL. You ain't going anywhere without a QB. And the fact is, I'm not saying that Baker's going to lead them to the promised land, but without him, they were going to go nowhere.
Yeah.
So we don't know anything about Kyle Trask. I mean, he could be a thing. He might be terrible, but we don't know. And do you really want to enter a season with kind of all this talent that proved to you, hey, we're still good. We just won 9 games last year and whooped on the Eagles in the playoffs. Like we can still do this thing. To bring in like inexperience at the QB position would have been a really bad idea. Keep the train moving, keep the great vibes going. You brought everyone back, and to me, I don't know if this is the year. I kind of point a little bit to 2025 for the Buccaneers because I still don't know if they have the pressure on the edges necessary to really get after quarterbacks enough to kind of like prove that they're going to put some elite quarterbacks under tension. But we'll see. To me, that's the one area where I'm a little skeptical on with this team, which I think going into next year they might address, and their cap's going to open up and they're going to have a lot more money. They might make a big splash to address that one need. So we'll see on that front.
Well, one guy that I think might really help with that, though, is that draft pick I mentioned earlier with Chris Braswell. Am I saying that name right? Braswell?
Yeah.
Okay. You got an Alabama player. No, that's all you need to do is get right there. But then when I'm reading up on him, you guys brought in Randy Gregory. Doesn't really impress me too much. Chris, a fellow Bronco fan here, that didn't really bode well for him. But looking at Chris Braswell's numbers here, for example, it's just something that really jumps off the page. Last year, he blocked a field goal and then got clocked at 21.8 miles per hour whenever he was running it back. Obviously, he wanted that touchdown really bad, but for an outside linebacker, you're getting up to Tyreek numbers a little bit, So
yeah,
probably the fastest he's ever run in his life.
He's an athletic dude, and the thing that I know the team respects a lot about him. Not that it's a deal breaker. Not that Jason Light says, I'm not taking anybody who's ever been in the transfer portal. Everything's on a case-by-case basis. But, the fact that Chris kind of worked his way up at Alabama, that was his dream school. He was behind a couple of All-Americans. You got to remember he played behind, Will Anderson and I'm forgetting the other one. But he played behind, thank you, Dallas Turner, yep. So he played behind two guys, finally had his opportunity, and thrived in that role. And the Buccaneers are wondering, hey, maybe we got this guy before he is going to become the guy. Maybe because he hasn't necessarily gotten the playing time yet and had to wait so long, maybe we just got what we needed here. So I think that that's something where I'm very curious. He's a rookie. He's probably got to put on some weight. We got to see. He's going to adjust to this offense. Curious how he's going to go, but otherwise, I do believe that I think that it was a savvy pick. It was a pick they had to make because, again, as I said, they need someone who can put pressure on the QB, and they have to take these dart throws because it's just like a quarterback. Those pass rushers are absolutely critical to success from NFL teams. They get paid a boatload of money for a reason as well. So that has to be an area of focus for them, and I'm very intrigued to see how he makes that transition. But there's a very strong possibility that the Bucs got in on him before he became a dude, because if let's say he played at Alabama this upcoming year, he would have been a first-round pick, no right? Doubt. The guy coming back, so he just never really had the opportunity. So the fact that again he stayed in school, fought behind some dudes, played some great competition. It leads Jason Light and company to believe that we found a little bit of a diamond in the rough. And I don't want to say that as like a literal sense because it was a second-round pick here. It's not like people didn't know about him, but just in the sense of that, hey, we got somebody that maybe other people might sleep on because the numbers aren't quite there, but, he's still got a lot of potential and a high ceiling.
Well, we really appreciate Evan. We don't want to keep you too much longer. We know you are super busy, and we are so appreciative that you were able to give us even 20 to 30 minutes of your time. But before we get you out of here, I would like to ask you, what's your, what do you think the Bucs are going to do this year? Can you give me a win-loss?
Yeah, I have it at 9 wins. I have 9 wins again for them.
Okay.
You think they're going to take the South again, right?
It's not hard to do down there.
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons have a very easy schedule. Many are projecting them to be a better team, new coaches. Usually that lends itself to be a great situation, some new energy. They finally got a quarterback. But we'll see. I mean,
they got 2 quarterbacks now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's true, yeah. I mean, the Falcons should be better. The Bucs, I think, will be relatively the same. The Saints, I think, will be relatively the same. I think people are generally sleeping on the Saints. Their defense is still extremely good. The offense, questionable with Carr, but the defense is still very good. They are a little bit of a deteriorating group, but I just don't think they're quite there yet as far as like being off the map. I think the Panthers, they can only be better from what we saw last year. Dave Canales will inject some juice into that group. They'll have a little bit of a different look, but mostly it's the schedule is really hard for the Buccaneers to open up the season. The back half is really favorable, and the 9 wins for me is essentially saying, hey, you're going to split against the Falcons, you'll split against the Saints, you'll beat the Panthers twice, and then you'll win the games you should win, and you'll lose the games you should lose. So it's a pretty conservative guess by me. I think a worst-case scenario for them is 8. Anything lower than 8 is a fireable offense for Todd Bowles, I think, this season. Yeah, definitely. I think 8 I can see. 9 is my prediction. 10 and above would mean that they stole a couple of games this year to kind of really impress me. So, and to really prove again that they're a team built probably for 2025. But yeah, that would be my assumption is you're gonna have, I think the predictions on them are a little bit too low nationally again. I think the betting line has them at 7.5. So, as I said, to me, I find that a little bit of a safe bet to kind of go with the Buccaneers because I think that 8 might be a floor for them. But they just have, unless injuries happen. I mean, you can't predict injuries. Yeah. So, if Mike Evans goes down for an extended period of time this year, the Buccaneers are in big time trouble. So it's just,
Winfield or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're in every
season.
Everyone. I mean, if Baker Mayfield goes down, there are a handful of guys where it's like if this person goes down, my opinion goes right out the window because obviously, and every team has those people, right? Like the Vikings struggled with that Justin Jefferson. It's like when those players go down, it just dramatically alters the course of how that season's going to go. So. But that's kind of where I view it as. I am once again. Last year I had them I think as a 7-win team, and I said give them a boat parade if they win a playoff game, and I ate those words a little bit later. But certainly the national media, nationally they had them at like 3 wins. Yeah. So I think again, people are sleeping on them a little bit, but I don't think they're going to be like world beaters by any means either.
Well, hey. They also play our AFC West teams. He's a Broncos fan. I'm a Chiefs fan.
Right.
So
Broncos might be an easy win this year. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I say that.
It's the first time Sean Payton's coming back to Tampa.
That's so true.
Yep,
good point.
Yep. Yeah. Well, in saying that, maybe there's a chance if timing works out, we could have you on in the future to discuss those upcoming matchups. We'd be honored to have you back on.
Yeah, just hit me up. You got my information. Let me know.
We would love that, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you, Evan, again. We are beyond appreciative for
great insight, man.
Yeah, giving us your time. It's our first just our first anybody who's won an Emmy, let alone multiple. So thank you for the honor, man. It was great chatting with you. We hope to talk to you soon, man. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great rest of the night.
Yes, thank you.
No problem at all. Yeah, have a good one, guys.
Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Look at Chad here getting an Emmy Award.
I know. It was nuts, man.
It kind of makes me laugh. Like, all right, we're getting there, dude.
Yeah, definitely.
Emmy Award
All we
winning.
gotta do is reach out, man.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. The worst they could say is no.
Exactly. And we really appreciate Evan for saying yes.
Yes, yeah. That's why I kept trying to tell him how appreciative we are. Because, why does he deserve, or why do we, what do we deserve any sort of his time? But here we are. We're talking the Emmy Award winners. I'll probably get this out tomorrow, and then I'll have, we're going to get together again on Wednesday, just a heads up. We do have another great guest. Gravedigger,
The Gravedigger,
yes.
Anybody out there listens to Around the NFL podcast, it is to me it is the podcast, the second podcast that I've listened to the most. Probably the last 10 years, I think I've listened to Around the NFL. It's the NFL's official podcast. They had 4 guys on there. Unfortunately, one of them passed away, but they had 3 guys, and one of them was a producer on there. This guy, Justin Graver, who was a producer, I think, for about a year and a half, 2 years, split off, started focusing on his own Titans podcast, the Music City Audible. It's a great podcast.
Yeah.
And great insight on the Titans, and they've made a lot of free agency moves, so I want to talk to him.
Yeah, so this is going to be a good full episode. Again, this is just a half episode. We're just giving you the interview with Evan, which if you're a Bucks fan, even if not, you should listen to this guy. He's got you just listen to his track record alone. It's unbelievable.
Great coverage.
We literally spent about 10 minutes just on him talking about all the crazy stuff he's done.
Fargo? I did not expect that.
I wanted to talk more about accents, but I bit my tongue.
You love doing that accent. That's why.
Don't you know there?
And I'm a sucker for it. It's so cheesy to ask about the movie, but I mean, dude, that's a great Coen Brothers movie. It is. The Wood Chipper. Everything.
Yeah. So I'm interested to pick Graver's mind just on producing and stuff. So that's going to be a great episode, I think, just in general for anybody and everybody who wants to get a little behind the scenes on podcasting and such. Because this guy literally ran one of the NFL Network's biggest podcasts. So this week here is big for Fringe Fanatics. It's big for the listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you.
Yes.
Give a big thanks to Chad for getting these guests. He's our booker now.
Well,
officially.
This is our producer right here. We're team.
Producer,
we're family.
Booker.
We are
hosts.
the Fringe Fanatics.
We are the Fringe Fanatics. You guys are the best fans we could ask for. Thank you. Cheers to you guys. Cheers to you, Chad.
Cheers
Love
to
you, buddy.
Love you guys.
We'll see you Wednesday at 4:30. Another early one.
That is, yeah.
Toodles!